Welcome back. So let's start the session now.
Yeah, sure.
So now we are at the session third of today's program. It is on online interaction with technical expert for finalizing project. And our global future is developing through communication, collaboration, and innovation, all of which are dependent on the technologies. The internet is now a global marketplace. We can say it's a global marketplace, a global workspace, and a global meeting place that provides a vast array of opportunities to not only learn about the world but interact with the world. It is just a intermediary for interacting the world, we can say. So, ma'am, will you give more focus on this online interaction with technical expert? So, ma'am, in previous session, you have said that you have to maintain the quality and delivery both for being in a demand. So,
Mhm.
I think you should start the session and after that.
Okay. So, Apurva, any other questions that are in your mind? Did you get your answers, or is there something that you'd also like to ask? Apurva is dropped out.
So,
Okay.
yes, it is fine, I think.
Okay. So, any other questions from anyone else about selection of their idea and what project they would like to undertake, or how should they decide what project they want to undertake? Okay, another feedback. While we are discussing some cases here, like the question of Apurva, we saw the business plan attended by Aishwarya. Then we had these survey questions yesterday by Pranita, Aishwarya, and someone else also shared one uh, questions, and we reviewed it, right? So others who have not made it,
Sorry,
are you? Are
ma'am, in all kinds of feasibility tests, preliminary feasibility study, their digital presence is very important for all cases, no, ma'am?
digital?
In an digital presence is very important because nowadays online mode is more preferring by every organization. So I must say digital presence should be there in the form of website, in form of any kind of digital advertisement like.
So, okay, so I'll cover that. Mm, okay, so the thing is, uh, technology earlier was a business in itself. Now, technology has become a part of every business, right? So, every business consumes technology in some way. It could be in operations, it could be in marketing, it could be so online presence might or might not be there depending on the nature of a business, but it's there would be some kind of digital medium definitely being used by all businesses there, because that has become the norm. The communication has become the norm. So even your online even your say the kirana shops that were there earlier, they are totally offline. They were totally offline modules, but now you see even they have even if they do not have a website, they do have an ordering number where you can call, and or a WhatsApp number on which you can send your list, and they will provide you the provisions at home. So some kind of the models are changing because of incorporation of technology, due to penetration of mobile technology and internet technology. All businesses are communicating using some medium, some technology medium to communicate with their customers. So that communication part has become a must, sort of, for every kind of business. Then comes the internal management of the business, and you'll see most of the businesses these days uh, will be using some kind of billing or inventory management software. Uh, so even in internal operations, for order management, those kind of things, you'll see everyone is using a technology platform or a software. Even if they are not building something of their own, they'll be using a SaaS platform. So SaaS is software as a service platform. So someone else has built it and they rent it out and they take a subscription of it, and they'll use some kind of technology to actually incorporate in their operations, also to streamline it, to make it more efficient. Then there's a third thing where marketing comes. So when we are talking about startups or businesses which are just starting, you do not have the kind of budget that is required for traditional marketing. What was traditional marketing? You give ads, newspaper ads, TV ads, radio ads. You have these big billboards and pamphlets and all. So pamphlets is still something that small businesses can afford, but it has a limited reach. If your business is a localized business, then pamphlet system still works very good for startups. But talking about booking billboards, doing creating ad films and advertising that on those ad films on radio and television is not something that is not within the marketing budget of a startup most of the times. So startups generally use digital media for their marketing outreach as well. And therefore, a lot of small budget ideas a startup has to do lean marketing and think of a lot of small budget ideas. A new startup depends a lot on referral sales. So initial few, say up to 100 customers would generally be people you would have directly approached in person or their references. So a lot of generally first 50 100 customers are reference based customers. But once the business grows, if you have to grow the business, you have to go beyond the known circle and go beyond the people whom you can connect physically. So how do you connect to others? How do you make that outreach? You'll be using low cost marketing techniques. So what are the some low cost marketing techniques? They're generally yellow pages in most of the places. If you have an offline business which has localized thing, you can use yellow pages, you can use pamphlet drive. Then you can do targeted marketing kind of a thing, where people go to a particular, your target audience goes to a particular area, your representative is there in that area, and you're collaborating and doing marketing in that place where most of your customers walk in or go to. Then comes businesses which are not localized. So there are online businesses, right, which are reaching out to everyone. Say there's a media channel, online media channel, or a online YouTube channel, or online something that is being done, or a portal that you have built for, say, fashion selling, fashion retail. So your entire sales depends on how many people are going to your portal, visiting your portal and trying it out. And you can't really limit it to 10 people or 100 people in your circle whom you are asking to visit and do it. So you'll need to do a lot of online marketing there and digital marketing there. So you have Google ads, you have Facebook ad campaigns. You can have your social media presence and do targeted social media marketing there. You have Instagram there, where you can put in pictures of your products and all. So you have to really be innovative. When the resources are limited, you need to innovate, right? Because you have low budgets and you have to do low cost marketing. So there used to be a lot of email marketing earlier, which is now not very common. There used to be a lot of SMS marketing and call center marketing earlier, which has reduced to some extent because people are activating their do not disturb feature, and people are marking the bulk emails as spam, and the softwares themselves mark your email campaigns as scam. So there's not a lot of response. So how do you decide what media to choose? Is depending, it also depends on your customer doesn't get offended if you're spamming him or you're calling him repeatedly. So you have to see how do you reach out to him passively or indirectly. That is where you need to be innovative. So a lot of businesses will first offer you free something, or introductory discount coupon or something like that for people to try it out. So you need to have budget for that also, where you're not taking much profit, but you're trying to actually attract customers to try out your product. So you have those introductory or launch schemes that you have to think of. So, is technology affecting businesses? It is affecting businesses in a big way. Where you employ it, so the use of technology has to be judicious. You cannot be extravagant because there is technology available for everything, doesn't mean you need to use all of it. You have to be very judicious because technology incurs cost. It incurs cost in purchase or development. It incurs cost in maintenance as well. So, an entrepreneur, depending on the resources he has or how much he can manage initially, you have to decide what technology is critical to your business and adds to your profitability, and accordingly choose which technology to introduce in your business when. You need not have accounting software from day one when you have no transactions. Till 5,000 transactions you can actually maintain the record on your excel sheets also. You need not buy a tally software for your company at that stage. You can easily outsource it to a accountant who can then file it in tally, right? So uh, depending on what is the volume, you do not need a crm or a customer management package when you have only 50 customers. You should be having a personal touch with them, right? So all these technologies are available. They are available in cheap models. You do not need to have in-house technology. You can have a SaaS technology, that is subscription based technology, which is generally cheap, and you can switch on to it anytime. For cloud also, you now have so many cloud technologies available where you can increase as the volumes increase. You can keep on buying more and more cloud space. So you need to decide based on that when you will introduce what technology in your business. The essential technology, the technology that's essential to your business, needs to be there when you start. Rest of it you can keep incorporating to increase the efficiency. You have to do cost benefit analysis at every stage, even for technology. Cost benefit analysis is when you invest something into the business, a cost that you invest into a business, what is the return that it is bringing. If it makes business sense to invest into that technology or into that expense, then you invest into it. Otherwise you postpone it till you have more resources. So you have to really be very wise, and you have to be a hustler when you have got limited resources to start with, which generally individuals have. And by the time you don't know whether your business is a good investment or not, whether it is paying off or not, you do not put too much money into it. Once your business starts paying back or starts giving returns is when you think of investing more into your business, because it has started showing the promise. But the essential components have to be there, which are required to execute that business. That essential component you have to invest into. Every investment that you make in earlier phase should translate into revenues. So you do only those investments which translate into revenues. Uh, or growth, probably. So that is how you have to decide at every stage what technology or what mechanism you need to bring into your business, right? So every business is a risk. Every business decision is a risk. It might work, it might bomb. So the best thing is, when you're testing a new thing, do it as light as possible. uh, the philosophy of entrepreneurship, of trying new things, is failure is not bad. Failure is a learning. It is a step towards success. Every failure is a step towards success. It's a part of the learning process. But then the cost that you pay for that learning or for that failure should not be too high. So it should not be that the mistake that you're making or the risk that you're taking is so huge that you can't afford it, right? So that after that, you actually the market is accepting it, you can execute it, and you can once the business starts paying, that is when you start investing more into that business to grow it, right? And that is why that concept of pilot. And nobody is going to pay you for an idea or a concept without showing that you can execute that, and that it has that market will be accepting your hypothesis with which you have started the business, right? Okay, so any other question? Where are the list of questions? Please ask questions.
Ma'am, actually, I have a question similar to Apurva. Uh, that is, 3 years back, I started to run a business.
Okay.
And there I found an investor. He is willing to, pay for the devices we are going to make and all. But suddenly he got back. He
Okay.
stopped paying us and everything. And our devices are half made because every other advisor of him advised her that don't, pay them money. Their age is so less. They are nearly, 22 to 23 years of age. So how can we trust them? They may not be the one who will be taking your money and run away, but how we can trust them to do the business successfully?
Right, Aishwarya. So that is exactly the point I was trying to make. If you don't risk your money on yourself, why should someone else risk his money on you? That is why you need to do a successful pilot to prove that ability that you can do it and that the market wants it. So once those two factors are established, that you can execute it and the market wants it, and you have your skin in the game, you do believe in that idea so much that you are ready to put your skin or your resources on risk for that. So once you do that, then people trust your self faith, your self belief, when you show it to them and prove it to them,
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
So once you do the pilot, if that person is interested and you have done the pilot and shown it, they'll come back and do it. Most of the investors, if they like the idea, they'll still not invest into you till the time they see that you can actually operate that business, and the market is showing interest in that business. They like it and they say, okay, you start and we'll be there. So that will happen with a lot of investors. Even when you go for commercial fundraising later, they'll try and watch you and see over a period of 1 year, they'll be in touch with you every time. If they like you, they'll be in touch with you. If they stop picking your phone, means they are not interested in your business. If they respond to you every time, okay, so how have you been doing, what is the progress, what else have you done, that means they are interested, but they're just waiting and watching to see whether this will work or not work. Because you see, what happens is you are risking on yourself because you believe in it, you have control over it because you are executing it. But the person who is putting in money, he has no control over it, because he doesn't know whether you will be able to do it or not. He himself is not coming to do it. He's just putting his money based on whether you have proven your ability or not. So and what is he investing into? He's investing into profits. He's investing 10 rupees because he expects that after a year he'll be getting 100 rupees from it. That's his expectation for investing in your business. He's trying to
Yes,
make
ma'am.
money through you, but till he feels things are in control, why will he give you 10 rupees if he's not sure whether 100 rupees will come back to him after a year or not, right? So you have to think from that perspective also. What does that person want who is giving you money? What is he looking for? What does he want? So what he wants, some people are looking for partnership. They might even become a partner, invest and come on board and help you take your business forward. So that is one proposition you can give to individual investors, not to commercial investors, because commercial funds won't do that. If they are doing equity investment, they as it is will become shareholder of your company, right? So they themselves will come on board automatically. But if it is an individual who is interested, individual investor, you can always offer partnership. But how do you get credibility? You get credibility by proving that you can do it. You have to show that sample that you can do it. Maybe I'll say, for instance, suppose I'm working with LBS for the first time for doing a program workshop. LBS has never worked with me. They've just seen my profile, but they don't know whether I'll be able to take the sessions or not, whether students will respond to me or not, whether I'll be able to communicate well or not. So probably they'll offer me a session, right? And if they like my work, then only they'll offer me another session or another program. If they don't, if they think I am not making sense to the students, or probably things are not going as they should be, I'll not get another session, isn't it, Aishwarya? That is how you test a new person, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
Um, so that is what the investors will also want to test. And if it is an individual investor and he has shown interest or she has shown interest earlier, rest assured, if you go ahead even without him and show him or her, they'll be interested in investing in you again. But then the initial risk capital has to be of the entrepreneur.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, if I going to start a pilot project, then in your opinion, what should be it? It should be that clothing website based on body shape, or this IoT agriculture, or that health drink made up with mushroom. What should be the best to start in between three projects?
So if you are planning to start health drink based on mushroom, then Pranidita is already your partner in the business.
Of course, of course. I would love to have partners. That's why last day I was telling our ma'am to make the group. I mean, in the group, enable our. What can I say? I am not making sense properly. Let us
No,
communicate.
I got it exactly, Aishwarya. And generally, all the entrepreneurs or people who are interested in a startup are very well networked people. They are not afraid of sharing their idea. They are not afraid of taking other good people on board, because everyone needs support. One person does not make a business. Business is always made by a group of people, right? Working dedicatedly towards making that business a success. No person has been able to make a successful business single handedly. There has always been a team of people working towards it. It could be a founder team, it could be your key employees, but there will be a team who is dedicated and capable and shares the same dream or same vision as you do. Unless you can build that team, you cannot build a successful business. It is just not humanly feasible for one person to manage every aspect of the business himself or herself. So you need good partners, trusted partners to do it, right? And funders also, if you talk about commercial funding, most of the equity funders, say seed fund, angel funds, come to businesses who have got a founder team rather than a single person working, because they know ki there is a backup available. So if one person is not well or something happens, there's other person who will take charge. There are people who can share the responsibility. Otherwise, the business gets limited to the capabilities and availability of one person. If you're working on marketing, operation gets affected. If you're working on operations, the marketing gets affected. If you're working on marketing and operations, your finances get affected. Something or the other, because one person, it's not humanly possible for all people. So either you have key management staff in place, or you have a good founding partner team. That's a very good thing to have, and most businesses these days are starting with them. And then your seed capital, which your risk capital, also gets divided. So, suppose you got 2 lakh to invest in your business, Pranita also banks 1 lakh, so now you have 3 lakhs to invest in the business, right? Things like that.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
the resources get pooled. the abilities, the you say, in Hindi we have this um, saying, एक और एक 11 हो जाते हैं, right, which means 1 plus 1 is 11, not 2. So that happens when another person comes. Also, entrepreneurship is a very hard journey. It's a very tough journey to establish a new business. You need a lot of support, and you need a person to walk along. So it's very good if you have trusted co-founders to start a business. So that is one thing. The other thing is, how do you choose? You will choose based on what business do you think you have maximum experience or capability to execute whatever challenges you're more, you feel more confident about whatever comes in this business, I'll be able to handle well, because things are more in my control, because you have the requisite skills, you know more about that industry, right? Say you have good network into agri side, basically because that is your market, right? And you know how to launch because you have those network, some network in place, or you have some people in place who can connect you to the prospective customers, and you feel it's a ready thing for me, right? I already have, you know how to reach out to my people. I already have my my expertise is technology, the IoT solution. um, I do have ready access to the market through a partner or through another company or through somebody, or I already know certain people who are using it and who are willing to take my technology, and it's ready to launch kind of a thing. Then I'll develop the product and launch it first, because things are already in my control. All factors, the feasibility factors that were required, reach to the market, operational control, the technology control, all those factors are in your control. And you yourself. Okay, another thing is ki, when you want to start a business, one is you base that business based on your ability to do it. Founders are the first employees of the business. The founder should have inherent capability to manage that business and lead from the front. So every entrepreneur is a leader. He leads his team, or she leads his team, and a team worker as well. So suppose I want to open a restaurant, right? And I don't know anything about cooking or managing a kitchen. So I'm totally dependent on hiring one good cook who will be managing it for me. If that cook runs away or tomorrow gets a better offer, leaves me and joins there, my business goes kaput, because I don't know anything about cooking till the time I find another good cook, as good a cook. I cannot run my restaurant because I myself do not have any ability to run it. I will develop over a period of time based on working with that cook or somebody with whom I have started it. So I might develop over a period of time if I get involved, if I have the learning attitude. But if I don't have it on day one, I'm totally dependent on that cook. The way he runs it is the way my restaurant will run. Whereas if I myself am a good chef and I know how to run a kitchen, then probably even if my cook doesn't cooperate or doesn't do the job well, I can keep a check on him. If he runs away, I can train another cook over a period of time. I can take charge of the kitchen and train someone under me, and my business won't stop, right? So the thing is, you start in a field where you have some strength to so the key factors are under your control. So if the key factor in your thing is not construction or laying out of pipes or construction of reservoirs, but the IoT device, the technology involved, right? So
Yes.
in that case, that's what is in your control, right? And you can always find another person to do the construction for you. So if the key factor of that business, or suppose Pranita learned that mushroom is one thing that anyone can do at home without having a farm. You can something a housewife can start at home, right? So she says, suppose I start it and do it, and then I make other people also do it for me. Other housewives, I motivate other housewives by my example and tell them to do it for me, and then I'll start a business of processing it or marketing it or whatever. Right? So otherwise, it becomes a self-employment or a hobby income generation kind of a activity. Then it doesn't turn into a business unless it has a growth path. So Pranita does not know how to grow mushroom as of now, but it is a skill which can be acquired in a very short time. You have to be ready to learn the key skill of it. You will not say, I'll get a Mali who knows it and then he will grow it for me. If the Mali is sick, meets with an accident, your business closes, then that's not the right business for you. Right? So you have to know the key factors, the critical factors that are required for running your business should be under your control. So that is the idea. Unless you are a person with lot of resources, so you can have 5 Malis, one runs away, you have 4 more to do it, and you will have another Mali, right? So if you are a very resourceful person, then nothing is a constraint. If Ratan Tata wants to start mushroom farming business or mushroom drink business, he can choose whatever model he wants because he has no dearth of resources to invest into it. He does not need to know mushroom farming. He will employ an expert who will do the mushroom farming for him, right? And that expert will earn more than you will earn with your business initially, but he'll not have a growth path. So that's the difference. In job, you have limited growth path, and it's a highly pyramidal structure. You might earn more in the beginning, but not everyone reaches the top of the pyramid. Right? In business, the possibilities are endless. It depends on your how resourceful and how you visionary you are, how much you can learn. Also, certain external factors which are out of your control. So I'll not say business success can be predicted or business failure can be predicted, because a lot of factors are out of a person's or individual's control. But then Pranita will have to undertake a course and learn from an expert the minute details and the tricks of mushroom farming. What are the challenges? What are the things to keep in mind? And then start off her own. And she can also do it, find out the basics and start doing and learning in the process herself, and then only involve other people in the business when she wants to grow it. But that skill has to be with her because she has to teach other people how to do it, right? So that process of cultivation is in her control. Then comes the drink making. That's a different part. You want to create another drink, then that's a whole kind of biotech research that goes into it, the whole R&D process that will be there as to the stability of the compound, the doses required, and the whole kind of trials and testing that need to be done. The taste factor, the texture factor, um, the shelf life, preserving it. How do you do that? So there are different whole lot of things that will come once you start processing it and converting it into a product. But if I'm talking about simple mushroom cultivation, so one is that how many factors of that business are in your control that you can manage. That can be one deciding factor of what business opportunity can you choose. What are the things which are more ready, like if market is ready, if product is ready, what
Ma'am,
are, yeah,
can I
Pranita.
launch any incubator? Does it help me regarding the mushroom farming and all?
Yes, incubators do help you, but you need to have an idea to go to the incubator as to what you want to do. So, if you are clear that you are here to do a mushroom cultivation thing, the incubator will help modify or shape up your idea into a better one.
One
So,
more thing, ma'am. Regarding cost, I have I need some clarification actually. On the other day, we have some virtual tour, and I just asked about the price. So the sir
mhm,
said it's 120 for 1 kg.
mhm.
Generally, I used to buy in Bangalore some 200 grams for 56 rupees. See how I find a lot of difference. But
Yeah,
it's good.
right.
For
So,
250,
so,
you can
so
get
there's
that there, but
so
they're charging me for 200 grams 56 rupees. So if I come into this field, can I charge up to 40 or 45? That's going to be correct for this market.
So, Pranita, it doesn't make sense to reduce the price in the market for a commodity marketing. Playing on price is not a very good idea. But the thing is, how do you bring down the cost? So, what you're talking about is the grower's cost, right? So, that is the grower's cost. But grower is not the only person who was involved when you bought the mushroom from wherever you bought it. There was a whole supply chain that was involved, the retail outlet, as well as the supply chain, the transportation that was involved after the grower has grown it. So all those people also need to earn and have their livelihood from it. So everyone in the chain makes a profit. That is why their profits or their cost also gets added to the grower's cost. Probably when you had the virtual tour, the grower was telling the price, the cost that he sells at, or the cost at which he grows. But when it comes to you, there's margin of the retailer, there is transportation cost added, there's packaging cost added, there's margin of the distributor in between. So all of those margins are added to the grower's cost, and therefore that is the cost that comes. What lot many people are trying to eliminate there is direct from farm to the consumer. But all these online portals who say I am removing the entire distribution chain and I am bringing the product produced directly to you from the farmer, will also take a commission in between, because that person also has to survive, and the product has to be packaged and traveling from the farmer's growth side to the consumer side. So there will always be some cost involved, even for that online interface, and for that own person to have his income who is doing it, and his team to have the income. So more the number of people involved. So a product's cost is not just the cost of the grower, just the grower's cost. It's lot there are a lot many people. That is why we say the artisan gets very little price, and the people in between take away so much of the profits. So is there a judicious distribution of profits? How does the last person benefit? In case of farmer also, that's a point. In case of say a lot of our traditional textile handwork, also that is a point. Ki why are they poor? If the product is so costly, why are they still poor? So the people in the chain are taking more profit, and a lot of online things are coming up to reduce that profit that more people in between are taking, but it has still not made them rich. So there's a problem there. Have I answered the question, Pranita?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, I
So
don't know what happened between completely. Thank you, ma'am.
okay. So when you introduce a new product in the market, there are, and you want to make a place in a very competitive market. So what you said, one of the idea is to bring down the price, right? But there's no so then a price war starts, and a person with larger volumes can play more with the price than a person with smaller volumes. So so that is called economies of scale. That's a management principle. Now in that case, it's not very wise for a new player to enter on the basis of cost benefit. He can always charge the market rate for it, or a little bit lower than that, because say you can always justify saying ki that's a brand, he's charging for the brand, I do not have a brand, so I'm charging a little lower. So that way you can play with the price marginally, but once you grow, your overheads will also grow once your business grows, and then your price will again increase and come to the market stabilized market cost. So it can be an introductory way of entering the market, which is already saturated. So that's one of the tricks. The other trick is product differentiation. So once you have the marketing class, I guess you'll be learning about those strategies. So there are entry strategies and there are penetration strategies. So how do you catch the attention of the people to first try out your product? It can either be based on product feature or discounts. So what are you going to use? That's your call as to what can you sustain And after introducing, are you sure that once you give him cheap and he tries out your product is better, and then he'll stop buying the traditional product and switch over to your product? Then you can have initially low price, that kind of thing. Because ultimately your overheads will also increase as you grow the business. You'll have employees, you'll have a bigger setup that will incur a cost, so your cost will also increase. That is why you'll see that a lot of people, in even in markets where there are a lot of big branded competitors, there are always some local producers, local things which are available at a lower cost, but then the quality control is not there. So there will always be that thing, that space for people to play with. That also depends on where you are placing your product. So it's also a positioning strategy as to where in the market do you position your product. Are you positioning it as a low cost, locally manufactured thing, cottage kind of a thing? Do you want to establish your branding around it? And later, it depends on what vision you have. So there are different strategies there of how you position and introduce your product. That's part of all the marketing strategies. Right, Pranita? But you need to think in long term.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, so we were talking about how do you select your idea, right? So Aishwarya, have I answered your question?
Uh, no, ma'am. I have asked you for your opinion that from these three, which would be the best? I mean,
I gave you the factors based on which you take that decision. That can never be another person's call.
and
That can
for
never be another person's call. And you should not listen also. You take opinion from everyone, but never listen to other people. Ultimately, it's your judgment because you are taking the risk. You are putting your life, your time, your money on a stake. So ultimately, it has to be what you believe in and what appeals to you most. But I was just saying, if you want to make a rational decision, what are the factors that you can consider in making that decision?
yes,
So,
ma'am.
having where do you have more control, on which business you have the ready resources and more control, what suits your skill set, your experience set more, is probably the business you should venture into first. So these are some of the factors that you need to evaluate between all the three projects. So when we talk about this feasibility thing, the feasibility thing, when big companies want to diversify their money and they want to start a new project and they want to diversify into some industry, and they have three options in which they can enter. This is what they do. They make feasibility report for each option, each project, and then they decide based on the factors which are in their control or the cost issues and everything, where would they want to make the investment. But there it is more impersonal, because a company has a lot of resources. In your case, you are the resource. If you are an entrepreneur and a startup, you are the resource. So decision has to be very personal, because you are risking everything in your life for it.
Yes, ma'am. And for Pranita's case, if Pranita make a successful, what can I say, mm, mushroom production plant, then of course I will tie up with her and take products from her and make byproducts to sell. And
Yeah,
for this
so
filing patent and everything, I mean, I can do that. It will take time, but I can do that.
very nice. So that's one good point, Aishwarya, because uh, every person has limited resources. Like I said, even if you don't have team, you need a lot of partners to do a business. So it might be internal team members, it can be your business partners, or it could be people you collaborate with. That helps solve a lot of your problems when you
Aishwarya
start.
idea is good, but does it work? I mean, somewhere in South India, and she's somewhere in West India. Does this works, ma'am?
It does. It does.
The food case, like generally it's spoiled, right? For the transport and all.
I
Okay,
will
so
not be always in Kolkata, of course.
you
I have a lot of doubts. For the transport and all, it's generally the spoil, right? How generally people manage this type this type of
okay,
business?
okay. So here what happens, Pranita, I'll give you an example of a startup I know. Okay, so one of the startups I have worked with, they are into creation of um, okay, online learning content. And how they do it is, so what is the whole concept? It's a company called Nolens. Probably if you search, you'll find it's KNO, knowledge wala, KNOW, and lens, LENS. So what was the concept is that most of the companies now are and even colleges are shifting to online learning. And online learning is very boring, right? If you, and self learning modules, right? So if a new employee joins and you want to do the what do you say, induction training of the employee, you will have this presentation and whole set of things, and you'll make an employee go through that training modules and fill the feedback form or take the quizzes. And that is how you get to know that he has done the induction training part of it. And there's certain other such things which are employed in the company, but these are so boring that people generally do not pay much attention to it, and they don't retain any knowledge. So they don't retain anything that has been taught to them. They just do it as a lesson and complete the exercise just to uh, complete the formality. So what they said was, if this same thing was made interesting, so suppose I was having this workshop with you face to face, it would have been much more effective than when I am having it online. Because then we would be sitting and making the plan together. You'd be having the plans, and we would be working on it together, right? And everyone's input would be taken, so it would be more workshop mode then. Right, online there's some limitations, and also that face to face connection and the energy doesn't transfer, which happens when we are face to face. There are lot of non-verbal things that happen. There's a lot of group dynamics that comes into play. There's a lot of energy transfer that happens when you're doing it physically. So it has its own, online platform has its own limitations that way. So the learning becomes dull and people don't retain it. So they, what the idea they said was, we'll make learning very interesting. When we see movies, and when we might have seen a favorite movie of ours 15 years back, and we'll still remember the dialogues. So for instance, for Hindi speaking audience, if it's a Sholay, it was when I was a kid, but we still remember the dialogues, wo Basanti and all the characters there. And there are other films of which some dialogues are very famous, and whatever scenes we like, whatever songs we like, we remember. Why do we connect so much to that? Because stories are interesting. As a human being, we love interesting stories. We love emotions that are there, that helps us connect to it. And therefore we retain that. We retain the knowledge, we retain the dialogues, we retain the names. So what they did was, they developed. They said we'll make the lessons interesting. We'll turn all the lessons into movies. So we'll shoot movies. We'll shoot documentaries. We'll create a story around every learning, every lesson, and then we will have these actors and characters who are actually enacting the whole thing. And while doing that story, they are imparting the knowledge. The characters are imparting the knowledge at regular intervals through their stories. And then they have these revision quiz in between to make sure that people are noticing the knowledge also that they are trying to bring through that story. But it has very interesting humorous stories and everything going on. There are real actors from film industry, the junior artists from the industry who are acting in those. They do the whole screenplay and script, screenplay, dialogues, and then actors shooting for them. They have director and producer team. Now all the artists were available. Now this entrepreneur was in Noida, when I was in Noida in the JSS incubator. This entrepreneur was there in Noida, right? And he had to do this shooting, and all the artists and the production teams for doing the small budget films is available in Mumbai. It's not there in Noida. Now, he found a partner, his college mate, who is also a film buff. And the moment he heard this idea, he got so excited. Okay, we'll be writing a script, we'll be shooting. So he's a movie buff completely. My this entrepreneur also is. So they got together, collaborated on this. Now, how they work? I'll show tell you how it works. One of them is sitting in Noida, the other one is sitting in Mumbai. The person who is sitting in Mumbai actually engages in the shooting part. So when the shooting is happening, or when the schedule is in shooting schedule is on, sometimes the entrepreneur from Noida will go and travel there, right, and be part of what he wants to be. And the whole script writing, screenplay, dialogue, and all those things, the quizzes that have to come in between, the content, um, all that part is done, both of them sitting in their location. They'll keep changing. So one is writing the script, sends it to another, other adds his input, then there's a lot of discussion, and then they evolve the script, then they'll evolve it into a screenplay, and to and fro they keep coordinating, right, and doing the creative work. And when the shooting happens, the person in Bombay manages the whole thing, and the person in Delhi will go and attend and see if the things are there. Then the editing happens to convert it into the proper sequence of film. So those kind of, and a lot of decisions are common. So they are partners in that business, and they are managing it from two different locations, right? The technology part, the other person works. The person in Noida is also into a lot of marketing activity of that film, in creative writing as well as marketing activity, arranging the resources. So that way you divide the task between partners as to who can do what, and how do you do it together. But the whole production part of it is taken care of in Mumbai, because that's the site where the resources are available. Getting it, Pranita? So it's very much feasible that partners are in different location, and yet they are working together by taking care of different aspects of the business.
Okay, ma'am. Once I start, I will try. So, what is the app, ma'am? You mentioned
What is the?
the app you mentioned. Uh, now
Okay,
you
the business I was talking about right now.
yes, yes. What is that?
Okay. So it's called Nolens, Knowlens, Nolens. It's nolens.com. So they have all these films available online, and you can have a subscription and watch it and learn from it. So they are all online modules delivered through website, and there's a subscription model involved in it. So I don't know what all films they have made. When I was there was one for training the salesmen. They also make such films, training films for companies for their personal internal use in training. But they also have some on the website which are for everyone, like sales training. There's something making of a salesman kind of a film. Then there's something on interview and placement. How a interview panel judges a candidate, how they evaluate a candidate, what all things. There are four candidates. There's a story. There are four candidates. There's a placement drive in the college, and one student is made the coordinator, and then he's taking a feedback from the students how their interview went. Then they give their own assessment of this is how my interview went, and then they show the what the interview panel is thinking about it, the candidate's own assessment, and actually how the interview panel is looking at it. So those kind of things to give an insight into to a candidate who appears for an interview. So those kind of films they have, where you while seeing the movie you get those learnings, and you can also get a film made for yourself. So there was something on the Vishaka guidelines that is to be implemented in the businesses on this sexual harassment in workplaces. So there are issues like that. Matlab, they'll make those training films on that for the training department. They've also made a couple of films for government and all, but they are then that is more as a service. So it belongs to the person who got it made, right? So that is how you manage businesses. There's another business I know about where partners were sitting in 3 different locations. Right, somebody was doing fundraising, somebody was working on the technology, somebody was working on the operations. So there were 5 partners who were working together on the project, taking care of different aspects of the business. So it's very much feasible, but a lot of coordination is required, of course. Any other questions?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, ma'am. Ma'am, I'm Tanya Verma.
Yeah, Tanya, please tell me.
Ma'am, my question is, ma'am, we are very young, so what and how we will convince to our audiences?
Who is your audience? Who is the
Uh,
audience and what do you want to convince them about?
Ma'am, for training and
Okay. For training, I didn't get it. For training, whom? Hello, Tanya? Tanya?
sorry, ma'am, network issue था थोड़ा.
Mm-hmm.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
for field, any field.
So, Tanya, that's a very generic question. Actually, in a product case, you might not even need to convince anyone, and you might not have an audience at all. So, lot many times you do not. When we are talking about business here, so we'll talk about in terms of customer and your product or service. Um, so, customer, how do you convince? Initially, first few customers are generally from your reference, where you go and physically demonstrate your product or service idea to someone who you think would be interested in it. And let me tell you, it's a very frustrating process to do the sales and marketing, because out of 100 people, only 5 or 10 people will get convinced to even give you an audience and see your product seriously and make a decision about it. So the success ratio is generally very low in that. There are a lot of indirect and passive means through which you reach out to your customers. You do physical canvassing for the first few, because you also need the feedback from the customer. How do you do it? You do it based on your business plan. What are the product features, differentiators, and the USP of your product vis-a-vis the competitors, and how that product will help you, and what is the return of on investment for the buyer of your product or service. So those are the 3-4 factors based on which you'll try to convince the customer to buy it, as to why he should buy it, how he'll benefit it, why what he is using presently to solve meet his need or solve his problem, why your solution or your product is better than that. So what are the unique features that your product has, and how investing in your product, or if he is already not using anything for that, why he should be using it, if he's a new to that particular product, and why investing in your product makes sense to him in monetary terms, in financial terms. Why should he spend this? See, I have this hard earned money that I have earned. There are a whole gamut of products people are trying to market to me and selling to me. I will only buy what is in my budget and what I need and what I'm convinced makes sense to me, gives value for my money. You have to prove that your product gives value for money for that particular customer, you know. So and then each individual has different way of looking at it. So if you sell me a technology product which is not proven, I might not be interested to invest in it, because I am more of a, so there are different category of customers. There are, if you go through that adoption curve of a product, there are innovators, and there are early adopters, and then there are late adapters, right? So innovators are excited by any new technology or any new thing that is launched in the market. They want to try it out. They are very excited by market mein naya kuch aaya hai, let me try it out. So one, you have to have income, disposable income for it. There are other people who are skeptical. See, 10,000 products are launched every day. You don't know which one works. I don't have the time and money to waste on trying everything new launched in the market. I'll only invest on what is tried and tested. And I have a feedback on it. So there are people who are, so I am somewhere between early and late adapters. I'm not afraid of technology, but I don't want to waste my time on unwanted technology. So only if it makes sense to me will I buy. If it's tried and tested, I'll buy. So I'm not an innovator. I'll not adopt something that is unproven. um, but if I need it and I feel it makes sense and people are using it and it is benefiting, then I might go for it. So there are different categories of customers who buy for different reasons. So you don't have to get really discouraged if people do not respond to it. You have to try out, and maybe out of that, out of 10 100 people, 10 people are innovators who will like to try a new idea. Not everyone is. Then it also is ki who feels the need for it, who feels the need for that kind of a product. You are trying out, reaching out to 100 people, only 5 people feel the need for that product. So only they will respond. So you'll not be able to convince everyone. That's the fact. So the conversion rate in marketing through different channels is different. So once you go into different modes of marketing and what is the conversion rate, you'll realize that the conversion rate is low. So first few customers you have to convince, it has to be from your known and referential circle. First few customers are always that, who give you the feedback for improving your product. And why do they do it? Because tum unka bachcha ho, they want to encourage you, right? And they want to they are very excited that it's like, yes.
So, ma'am, they should take some kind of referral because they are as
First,
a very
first few
young.
customer will always be that, because who will try an unknown thing, you know? So first people are generally the known ones. So it is almost like my niece makes a drawing. She's just 7 years old. She makes rubbish drawing, but every time she tries, we'll all be like, हाँ बच्चा बहुत अच्छा बनाया है, very nice, you should try more, and this is very nice, you have worked hard. So it's always people who want to encourage you or who believe in you will be the ones who will be willing to take that risk and try it out because you have made it. For them, you are the criteria. Or say your family adopted it and your father recommended it to his friends. See, my daughter has made this, right? Why don't you try it out? What do you think about it? So he'll share it with his circle. Your mother will share it with her circle. Your sister will share it with their circle. So your first 10-20 set of customers who are trying, who are doing trial for your product, will generally come from your known circle. If it is a B2C product, if it is a B2B product, it is to be sold to a business, then not. Then you'll have to go out and talk to businesses. But if it's a business to customer product, the testing or the trial phase can come from known people, right? But then the second thing is about buying it. When unknown people are willing to pay for your product, that is when your product makes sense, actually. And how do you reach out to them? So it depends on what your product is and what is the channel of advertisement or promotion you use to take it.
Firstly, he or she should collect relevant material on that, whatever they want to open. As an entrepreneur, they should collect all kind of related information about
So
that.
if you don't know the industry or the business you are entering into, ma'am, how will you execute it? See, it is easy if you have already been, see, if you are already there in, say, let me take an example. If you have already worked for a pharma company and you know how pharma supply chain works, what are the profits involved, what are the different people involved, you already know a few distributors, you already know, and then you are entering into that sector. You have already worked in that for 4 years, 5 years in that sector. You already know the people, you already know the margins, you already know the channels, you already know how that industry functions, what works, what doesn't work. You have already had your learning by working in that sector. Then when you are entering that industry, you already know everything. But if that is not the case and you are starting something as a person who has not been part of that industry, already and doesn't already know the people there and doesn't already know the inside workings of that industry, then you will have to actually find it out. You'll have to actually find it out and do all the research from first hand research in the market to find out how it works. So that will save your time in trial and error and wasting your money and time on unwanted things.
Ma'am, is there any industry association you suggest that they should join for the taking ideas related with business opportunity? Is there any industry?
Industry associations are there, but the joining criteria is so high, it is really very difficult for any um, startup to join it. The annual membership fees will be 2 lakh or something to be a part of that group. So generally, there are a lot of industry associations, but it's not always easy for everyone to join it. But there are groups like, say, TIE, the Indus Entrepreneurs. They have chapters in all the major cities of India. So that is a group that is meant for entrepreneurs, and they also have membership for students. So, and they organize a lot of programs. What they do is they organize a lot of programs around entrepreneurship, workshops, and talks on different topics. So you can be definitely part of that kind of association because the student entry is discounted.
Yes, Aishwarya, Aishwarya having one question.
Ma'am, what organization? I have just missed uh, its name.
The Indus Entrepreneurs is called TIE.
Mute yourself, Aishwarya.
TIE.
It's called
TIE. TIE. The
TIE.
Indus Entrepreneurs. So this is basically, I think some mic is on, it's echoing. Yeah. So basically, it's an organization that is started by Indian entrepreneurs who made success in the Silicon Valley. During that entrepreneurship boom in the Silicon Valley, California, the people who made a lot of fortunes, they wanted to bring those resources and knowledge also into India. So they created this not-for-profit organization called the Indus Entrepreneurs. They have a lot of big mentors from the industry associated with it. They conduct their programs throughout the year. Generally, those programs are in form of workshops and meets that are there. There's a student entry also into that program. You can become a normal member of that program. The institutional membership and individual membership, not very expensive. And they have these programs all year round. They have mentors. You can get access to their network of mentors. Once you attend their programs, you can also talk to those mentors who come to those programs. So you'll know local mentors in your area who promote entrepreneurship or who can help you with different things. Student entry into the programs is generally very discounted. So if for a business person the entry fee is 1,000, then for a student it will be only 500. So that kind of thing. So it's pretty affordable. So you can be part of those kind of associations. Industry associations are expensive. You need to be big one to join it, but you can definitely attend their programs and you can definitely get access to their reports, which are available on their websites. So SOCAM, FICCI, CII, NASCOM. So you'll have access to their reports. NASCOM has this program called, if you are an IT entrepreneur, NASCOM has a program called 10,000 Startups, which any entrepreneur in the IT sector can join. So that's another place you can be. Other questions? Okay, and people who are living in metro cities, you would be having something called meetup group. There will be a lot of entrepreneurship meetups also that would be happening in your city. You can attend those meetups and you can find like-minded entrepreneurs there who are collecting, and they are generally sector specific. Like IT entrepreneurs will be having their own meetups. People who are adventure seekers will be having their own meetups. So there are a lot of meetups based on interest areas of different people, and they generally plan physical meetings also once in a while. So you can explore the meetup groups also in your city to see what is the activity happening. Also, there are a lot of activity happening on the. There are other mentorship programs that are there in every city, but you'll have to actually search for it. Where do they advertise? They advertise on these all these online event declaration platforms that are there, which declare the local events of the city, not book my show ones. But there are online platforms like events where you can advertise your programs. You can also be part of a Startup India portal, which also advertises all these programs, entrepreneurship programs that are happening. So it has membership for all kind of. You can join as an entrepreneur, and they'll be sending you, once you're a member of it, the startup hub will be sending you some programs and competitions which are thrown by different agencies. You'll get to know about idea challenges. So be part of the ecosystem. You'll get to know what is happening in that ecosystem, the startup ecosystem. So Startup India hub, that government one, Niti Aayog one, is one place where you can join and become a member. Thai chapter of your place can be another thing where you can become a member. Then there are a lot of other events that keep happening. Um, what do I know about meetup groups that are there in Bangalore? It would be active. Hyderabad and Bangalore are like one of the hubs where the activities happen. Calcutta also should be having some of it. Uh, Kolkata is just emerging as a hub, but it would be having some of it. IIM Kolkata also has an incubation center, so which has incubation in different segments. You can go and explore there too, Aishwarya.
Yes, ma'am.
Right, you can go and find out the schemes that they have and the different programs they are running. They also had a program on women entrepreneurship, the one that IIM Bangalore also runs. So that program is there in, I think, in IIM Kolkata as well. They are running the program, and they have incubators. Is good. It's good to be in touch with the incubators because they have mentors and they have different programs that they are doing for training of entrepreneurs. And also they have these specific schemes that come for entrepreneurs. There'll be women training programs that are there. There'll be boot camps that they'll be organizing for developing your business idea. There'll be some schemes that will be coming, government schemes that will be coming. They'll be introducing that. So if you are in touch, or if you are in the mailing group, you'll keep getting the programs that they are doing. And once your business plan is ready, you can always mail your business plan to these people, right? But commercial help will be coming only once you do the pilot. But you'll get a lot of guidance and mentorship right from the ideation stage in all the incubators. Okay, any other questions?
Yes, participants. Anybody having any other related question?
No more queries and questions?
I think they are all satisfied.
Okay. In which case, I have a few points that I had noted down. I'll be sharing with you. I'll just conclude with those points, okay? One is, we have already discussed how you select the idea that you should be working on. And once you have done the pre-feasibility study of a business idea, you see how many factors are in your control. One thing, a few things that you need to remember when you're doing a business, right? And there are a lot of myths related to business, which you should just not believe. One is that business is an easy option to make money. It is not. It is not. It is a difficult option to make money. It's a long-term option, right? It's in short term, you will only invest money. You'll not make money. So let's not think that there's an overnight success or overnight you will become very rich. So like most of the, I don't know who said this, Narayan Murthy or somebody said, For me to become an overnight success, I had to work day and night for 10 years to become an overnight success. So people only get to know when you have become success and you think, abhi kal tak to naam nahi suna tha, today they are so famous, so easy to become famous, and they've suddenly become so rich. Whereas they have already worked silently and had their struggle for 10 years, which no one has seen, right? So it's not an easy option. It's a lot of work before you start getting the right idea and start generating wealth, but it's a long term thing. So you have to have long term vision in order to create a business enterprise. Is it an easy option? It's just not an easy option. If you're looking for easy options, please don't go into business, because business is a way of life. You live that day and night. It's not like something you can go 10 in the morning and leave at 5 in the evening, and you will have holidays and you'll have 5-day work week. No, you will be doing it 24/7 for 7 days a week. It is your baby. You can't leave it hungry, right? You can't leave it to die. So whatever is suitable for your customer, whatever is good for your business, you will be living it day and night. You will be thinking about it day and night. So it has to be something that really excites you, that you are
There is
really
no holiday
passionate about.
in this business. There is no holiday.
Yes, there's no holiday, right? That is only for, that is a luxury of employment. That's not a luxury of business. So business is a way of life. Like in the army, we used to say army is a way of life. 24/7 you are on duty. You never stop being an army person. You never stop being on duty, even when you are sleeping in your home. So it is something that also applies to a business. So 24/7 you'll have to think about your business, and whatever is good for you. If your client wants to meet you on Sunday, you'll meet him on Sunday. If your client wants to meet you tomorrow in a city which is 1,000 kilometers away, you'll fly next day to meet that investor 1,000 kilometers to project to present your idea. The investment might come or not come, but you'll do it, because you'll not miss that chance. You'll not miss that opportunity,
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
So you'll not
Yes.
say आज संडे है, आज तो मेरा रेस्ट डे है, आज तो मैंने पिकनिक प्लान की थी. That is not
No
what you
weekend, no Sunday.
yeah. So that is not, you live with it. It becomes a part of your life. You adjust your commitments with the business, but you have the flexibility to adjust your commitments. So if in your sleeping time you have been doing this, in your waking time you can sleep. So you have that flexibility to adjust the hour. You are the master, but you will have to do as per the needs of the business, become a priority over your personal life, over your luxury things. Your business takes precedence. So you will have to prioritize it, just like you prioritize the need of your children when they are. Of course, you will not be having children. I also don't have a child, so I'm just saying. In your family, you would have seen your parents, right? When you are in need, they'll leave every thing, and they'll look after your need. If you are sick, they'll not think of going and seeing a movie. They'll cancel every plan, and they'll first make sure that you are healthy before they enjoy, right? So that is what you do with your business. You treat your business like a baby. It's not easy. You have to really dedicate all your resources. You can't do it part time. It is full time. You live it as a part of your life. So it is something like a housewife, or I really now my right now my mother is sick, right? She fell and she broke her spine, and she is bedridden. I'm taking care of her and household, which I've never done before. And believe me, hats off to people who can 24 hours dedicate themselves to housework and to this. I mean, job is nothing compared to it. This is really difficult. Okay, so that is how, but you incorporate it. When I'm doing this, I have finished my work. Before that, I know just when I finish this, I'll go back and do it. I have managed it. That is how you manage. You have that flexibility to manage your timings, but business needs are a priority. So I could take these sessions because this was meeting the priority. This could be fitted in the schedule that I am following at home right now. uh, had this been at 10 in the morning, I couldn't have done it, right? Because that is when my mother needs me. So that is how you manage your business. It has to become part of your life, a priority in your life. So you have to take it along with everything in your life, and you have to plan it, things around it. Another thing that you need to remember is that it is a long-term income generating opportunity. Short-term, you'll lose money, you'll invest money. Later, it will start paying return. You have to have the perseverance to go through that period, right? If you're in a hurry in overnight success, then you'll not be able to create a long-term opportunity. Then you'll only look for short-term opportunity window that opens. You'll do the trading. It's like share market trading. You do the trading because today the rates are high. I can sell and make profit. It's like day trading, and you'll do it and get out. But it's not a long-term business proposition. So long-term business, you need to be aware that money will come in later, and there's always that cash flow that you need to maintain and reinvest into the business. So that thing you need to remember. Also, there is no business in which you only have the idea. There is no money on idea, and people will give you money, risk their money for you to live your idea and your dreams. No, you will invest yourself to live your idea and your dreams. People will believe in your dream and your ability, and then invest their money so that they can also grow with you. So your employees get attached to you, or your investors get attached to you, because they also want to grow like you. You have already shown that growth path, and they want to grow with you, so they come to you. So that is why they want to invest in you. So there is no business which is zero investment. You will invest. And Priyanka, you want to say something? Priyanka, your mic is on. You want to say something? Okay. So there is no zero investment business. And you need to understand, if you are not investing anything, only your ability, then you are investing the opportunity cost, right? There's a concept called opportunity cost. You could have done something else and earned money through it. That opportunity you are losing in order to create that business. So there is that opportunity cost that you are missing, right? So, and also there's time value of money. If you're losing time, then that also that with time the money reduces, the value of money reduces. So whatever you have invested needs to grow. So those concepts you need to understand. When you say you are just investing your time, there's no risk, because I'm only investing my time and I'm doing things myself. So there is always something that you are investing into a business. Never do business because it is the in thing to do, because it is a trend, because government is training you for free. No, that's not the reason to do business. When you are an entrepreneur, you get happiness from the journey itself, not from the success. Because I have to make 10,000 bucks in 20, when I'm 30, I need to have an income of 10 lakhs, and I want to buy my car and house by the age of 35. That is why I'll start the business. No, that's not the reason. You never start a business for the end. You start a business because you have a vision, a belief, right? You have self-belief. You are interested in that whole journey. So even the challenges and the pitfalls that come in that journey. Priyanka, please, can you switch off your mic?
Priyanka, mute yourself. Your mic is on.
So you invest into your business basically because you believe in it and you are enjoying the journey. So even if the challenges are coming, only if you love problems and you love to solve problems will you be enjoying that. Because there are a lot of ups and downs in a business. Business is never a stable journey. There's always this curve of up and down that will happen in a business. So when down comes, it should not be that you get discouraged and you leave everything and go. You need to have that perseverance to go through that hard time because you believe that there's a good time that is coming. So you'll be able to pull through that hard time, and you should be ready to learn and solve problems. Learn from every failure, solve problems that come in your way. And if you enjoy that process, then only you can be a successful entrepreneur, right? Rewards come after all the punishment has happened. So you have to be able to go through that punishment phase also to get those rewards. So it's almost like there are people who are in such a hurry to reach a particular place. We talk in terms of travelers. They are so interested in reaching a place to say that I've been to that place, that they don't, that they miss everything during the journey. For them, journey is the pain. They just want to say, I've gone to that place and seen that thing. They don't enjoy. So that's the difference between a tourist and a traveler. A traveler enjoys the whole process of traveling, right? All the beautiful scenes that they see in between, all the experiences, all the people they meet, all the culture they are exposed to, all the whole process is enjoyable. Whether they reach that place or not is secondary. That's an icing on the top to be able to go and see that place. But they have enjoyed the whole process from leaving their home, planning things, going through that experience of traveling, right? That whole process they'll enjoy. Not the place or end in itself is not just the reward. So you have to be able to enjoy the whole process of entrepreneurship. So that is why you need to pick up an idea that you can live with day and night, that you enjoy thinking about, that you enjoy doing. It cannot be something that I don't like, right? If I don't like traveling and my whole work involves only traveling, I'll not enjoy it. I can do it. I've done it all my life, so I'll be able to do it now. I can learn it and do it if I have not done it before, but I will not enjoy that process. I'm doing it just because at the end of it I want something. So similarly for business, you have to be able to enjoy. So pick up an idea, pick up a field which you can live day and night, you can think about day and night, you can make a part of life and enjoy it. So if I love plants and I love gardening and I make a business out of it, I will enjoy doing it. I enjoy the process of growing plants, I enjoy the process of seeing plants fruitify or something. So the process itself is so satisfying. I don't care about how much I'm selling or whatever till the time I start selling, right? So that is how you should, that is another thing, psychological thing that you should keep in mind when you are going to start a business, that you have to live that. You have to live that business day and night for the rest of your life. It should, that you should be so interested in it, you should be so invested in it, that you should enjoy that whole process of it, right? And don't think that you have completed your studies and now you'll start working and now you don't have to study anymore. Once you get into a business, you'll have to learn and study, develop reading habit, read
Continue.
every bit of news that comes about your industry and your business, anywhere, online, offline, newspaper, read the economic news, update yourself, the new skills that are coming, new technology that is coming in your business. Be always upgraded, be always ready to read new things about business, about people who have gone through that journey, what has their experience been. So you should, the study starts there, now a more focused study which you have to implement, who's learning, you have to implement, you have to start studying and learning again. So it's a constant learning. The journey of entrepreneurship is a journey of constant learning, constant problem solving, and a lot of perseverance. You have to deal with a lot of uncertainty. It is easy to say at the hindsight कि ये कर लिया होता, if we had done that this wouldn't have happened. But when you don't know the future and you don't have all the things laid out and you are starting on an unknown path, you have to be comfortable dealing with uncertainty. You have to make your decisions in an atmosphere of uncertainty. You don't know what future will turn out to be. You are just updating yourself based on trends and best guesses, so you have to be okay with taking decisions when you don't have all the data points, in ambiguity, in uncertainty, and then correcting your decisions as you go. So as you move along that path, whatever inputs you keep getting, accordingly you keep modifying your idea or you keep modifying your plans or strategies accordingly based on the experiences. So you have to have that flexibility, you have to have vision, you have to have that learning ability, problem solving ability, dealing with uncertainty and ambiguity, and being flexible enough to adjust everything and to modify your things, right? You have to be resourceful, you have to be very optimistic, because there will be a lot of downturns in a business as well. Before it establishes, there'll be a lot of hardships also. So you have to be very optimistic about it, and you have to be resourceful as to how to meet every challenge and how to overcome it when you have limited resources, right? So there are a lot of things I can talk about it till length, but I'll not increase this to any woe. Other thing is, you'll not have a stable, smooth, certain income. The income will always go up and down, right? So if you want constant income at the end of month, you want a fixed salary in your uh, account, please go for a job. Don't go for entrepreneurship then, right? Because you take that risk because somewhere at the end of it, you know you will be earning more than your salary. The growth potential of a business is more than growth potential of a salaried person, but that is in the long run. Initially it's a lot of hard work, lot of perseverance, lot of struggle. So it comes like that. So entrepreneurship is a lifestyle you have to live, and you choose that lifestyle. And it's not lifestyle about lot of money. It's about generating and creating money. So you need to remember those things, and you need to be on a constant journey of self development. What are the skills that you don't know? What are the skills that you don't have? What are the personality traits which are weak? You have to work on yourself and keep developing yourself, your skill, your knowledge. You should know a little bit about marketing, a little bit about finance. You should learn your develop your build your communication skills. You should be doing a lot of research, reading. Learn a bit about financial management and financial terminology. So you'll have to constantly work on upgrading yourself, becoming a better version of yourself. So even if you fail in entrepreneurship, you will be a very skilled, knowledgeable, experienced person who can do anything in life because you have made all your learnings. So it's also a journey of self development and self growth as you constantly update yourself, your personality, as well as your knowledge and your skills. So that's that journey you have to be ready to undertake. Okay. Mm, I think that is what I want to cover today. There's also a presentation I had kept, but I'll cover it on next thing
We have
when we
one
have
more test with
one
you,
more day.
ma'am.
That time I'll cover that thing, which is a summary of the whole process of entrepreneurship, of business creation. So that's a small summary I'll do at the end, right?
I think you all would be aware about, how could be a successful entrepreneur. And yeah, thank you so much, ma'am, for telling us secret tips for becoming an entrepreneur and for this wonderful session. And I must say, you had handled very efficiently, the participants' queries. And I'm 100% sure our participants are satisfied with your answers, and they will definitely follow your tips, your secret tips that you have discussed recently. And they will be becoming a very good entrepreneur in the future. I hope my good wishes with all of them. So thank you, participants. In this session, we don't have any quiz because it was the online interaction with the expert. So we don't have any quiz related with this session. Tomorrow we will have another session with you on the same time at 2:30. So thank you so much for your cooperation and patience. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much for this
Thank you,
wonderful
ma'am,
session.
and thank you all the participants. We'll be meeting again on third. Be prepared with your questions then. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Sure, ma'am.
Bye.
Bye bye, ma'am.